Hey there, everybody. Happy Easter, and welcome back to the Face First on the Treadmill of Life, Part 2. And pretty sure this is going to be a three-parter because I have been continuing to get into Psalm 62 all week and just kind of think on it. And, it just kind of reminded me that I absolutely love, even though I feel like that I'm like, I want to move faster. I want to get to more of the Bible. There's so much of the Bible to get to. If I just spend like weeks on like one verse or one passage or something like that, then I'm not getting anywhere. But then I just felt like God was just reminding me, that when we're really hanging out and spending time coming back to that same verse and same passage, same idea over and over, he just really layers it. At least for me, that's what I feel like, that he really, I started hearing it in different messages and podcasts, and sort of like this whole thing that I was talking about is just this idea of rest. So the face first on the treadmill, the whole idea was this visual of us just running. Because if you remember in the last video, part 1, I was talking about, I was just really coming out of this several days of just feeling like I was running on that treadmill, and it just starts speeding up, just feeling busy, but just life's little busy things, nothing dramatic going on. Praise God, not any sort of big deal stuff, just everyday life stuff that I just feel like was snowballing, and that treadmill was just going faster and faster, and my legs are just not keeping up, and I am about to just boom, face plant. Nobody wants that, So that's the goal. Let's not face plant. And then I was thinking, and then I was like, Brett, really? Like, I don't want that my goal, and I don't want your goal to just be to not face plant on the treadmill. Because, you don't want to. So the whole idea, and I started to think, and I was like, okay, with the whole visual of being on the treadmill, because this is one of the big things I feel like that when we're progressing, it's hard to progress when you have no idea where you're going. You put in on your maps to say where you want to go and how to get there. Well, it won't tell you where to go and how to get there until you give it a destination. And though we can't have this like perfect destination, we can at least get this idea of where we want to be. And so the idea being, Lord, I want to live in a place of just peace and joy and just a place of rest. And like we talked about, this is not going to be this like perfect oasis of nothing has happening and I get perfect sleep and anything like that. And I think that you guys hear me. I think that you know that that's not exactly what I'm talking about. We're just talking about there's a difference between your physical body being going through a situation where you're not exactly like happy, jumping off the walls, like, oh, this is awesome. Or even just like lazily just working through the day. But you still can have a spirit that is at rest and at peace and just moving and grooving. And I think that you guys would agree with me that those are the times that despite what's happening in life, when I'm closer to God, that's when I get that feeling of like, I can't explain it. I've just got that overwhelming peace that he talks about, which is awesome. So we just barely scratched the surface. And like I said, last time I just grabbed my Bible that I just do all of my normal Bible studies and that sort of thing with. That was the Holman Christian Standard Version. And so I talked about how maybe that next step would be to let's take a look at maybe some other versions. Maybe I didn't say that, but I was thinking that. So we were looking at Psalm 62. This was totally based on just a quick little devo that I heard on the radio. And so I was like, this is a good place to start, because I think that it's really important that we don't get hung up on where's the perfect place to start? Where would the beginning of this in-depth Bible study be? I think God is just saying, girl, just get in the Word. Just get in the Word. And that's all that we need to do and worry about. Is just get in the Word. And I've had to remind myself of that so many times this week because I've started to get overwhelmed, feeling like, oh my goodness, there's so many verses, there's so many topics, so many, just so many directions that I could go with this. And then I'm like, oh my goodness. And then God just reels me back in and he's like, Brett, this is why I want you to do this, because you and your other sisters out there are thinking that same thing. And I just want to get in the Word with you. And so let's go there because actually I'll say this now. I've got notes in front of me, so that's why I keep like touching this, and I'm going to look down and see all of this and flip because there were a lot of things. But man alive, our pastor's message was so powerful today. I mean, I was just like bouncing out of my skin, had guests there that I was just, oh my gosh, it was so fun to have people there that were hearing this message and that took a chance on coming to church. And I'm so excited for them to hopefully be back next week. But one of the things that our pastor was talking about in this particular message, he was talking about, one of the points that he said was about pursuing truth and not knowledge. Now, obviously, this is not about the message that we had at church, so I'm pulling a couple of things into what just was relevant to the idea. So this particular thing was relevant, and I thought to myself, again, like, this is why this is important, Brett, because you're not just trying to gain knowledge. We're not trying to just be able to create this outline and this perfect outline. Brett, you're just getting into my Word so you can know me more, and this is a lifelong pursuit. This is not something that is a sprint. You're not... you're not just gonna like hit it hard, know me, and then be done. Like, this is a lifelong pursuit. So let's just start here, So we're not pursuing knowledge, we're pursuing the truth, and we're pursuing our relationship with Him. So that's exciting. And I loved being able to just have that one extra thing from the message today to be like, yep, there we go. It's exactly right. So, and then the other thing that really stood out to me is today in the message was just him talking about how it's about the relationship, not religion. And I hear our pastor say that a lot, and I know that just from my own walk and my own past experience and all of that kind of stuff, that it's about the relationship and it's not about religion. But again, back to getting in the Word just often and seeking out, God, what do you have to say about how I'm feeling now and what's going on in my life now? Like, I don't want to religiously pursue God. I want to know Him deeper, so that my relationship grows, not so that my knowledge grows, not so that I can check off that box, not so that I can kind of feel good, but truly so that this changes. You know what I mean? And so that when I have that like frazzled moment, I don't think to like go vent to whoever's next to me and like, oh, commiserate with everybody else, but I'm just saying, God, like, you have so much more. And I think that, oh man, I'm excited. So let's talk. Okay, so Psalm 62, verse 1. Remember, we were reading through verse 1 through 7, talking about this is where he was really talking about rest. And then I just kind of keep coming back to verses 1 and 2. So, I am at rest in God alone. My salvation comes from Him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I will never be shaken. So, as far as digging a little bit deeper, I just decided to ask myself, what do I have on hand? Now that we've got computers and our phones and Bible apps and all of that, we have tons of resources. But you know what? I think that there's just something really powerful about being able to pick up God's written word, like on paper. Having all the technology is just added bonus. I think this was something that I was really convicted about recently, and just feeling like, I don't want to always be reading my Bible on my screen. You know what I mean? I don't want to, the boys will be like, oh, she's on her phone again. And I'm like, no, look, I'm reading my Bible. I want me, and I want the boys to see me with the Bible open, me touching. This is the living, breathing Word of God. So there's got to be something powerful right here. So anyway, I personally think that that's really important. So I thought to myself, you know what? We have a bunch of stuff here in our home office. Let me take a look and see what we have. See where I can go from there. that's where I'm going to take my first step of digging a little bit deeper. So I grabbed a couple Bibles off the shelf and realized, oh, I have a couple of different translations right here. So let me see. I went ahead and wrote things down. I have several of John MacArthur's, the MacArthur Study Bibles. One is in the ESV, one is in the New King James, and then I ran across this really cool, it looks really old. I think it's an old Bible of Sean's. I'm not sure if it came from somewhere in his family or if it was just one that he picked up a while back. I don't know. Anyway, doesn't matter. But this one is Old King James. So, yes. So those same verses, Psalm 62, verses 1 and 2, just read them in the Holman Standard. Then in the Old King James, it says, truly my soul waiteth upon God. From him cometh my salvation. He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. I shall not be greatly moved. So a little bit different. So I was like, oh, resting in God alone and then waiting upon God, to me, I was like, wow, that's kind of a different thing. Then in the New King James, truly my soul silently waits for God. So I'm like, here we're introducing a whole new little thing here, silently waiting for God. From him comes my salvation. He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. I shall not be greatly moved. And then in the ESV, for God alone, my soul waits in silence. So again, this idea of waiting in silence. From him comes my salvation. I feel like that's been a common thread throughout that particular segment. Didn't change much over the translations. From him comes my salvation. He only is my rock and my salvation. Again, that didn't change too much. My fortress. So that little phrase changed a little bit throughout. My stronghold, my defense, my fortress. I shall not be greatly moved. And that didn't either. Now, of course, the concept still is the same, but whenever there's a little bit of a different word, it just kind of like checks off in my mind. Remember how we were talking about just getting in the habit of asking more questions? So that's the next question I want to ask myself. What are the differences in these words? And that's something that's going to be really important for us to go back to the original text to see, okay, well, what was the original language that was used as to why some translations felt like saying rest in God alone and then waiting on God, waiting silently on him. What exactly does that mean? And how's that gonna kind of translate to my life? One thing that we talked about in part 1 was, really important to not just grab a verse and just kind of hang out on it like that, but to grab it and then read more of the chapter, start to really understand the context of what's happening here. So then what's really great about my MacArthur Study Bibles is they have a little bit of commentary. So for now, that's the only commentary that I've used. And one of the things that it was talking about was that this passage, it was like, perhaps this is during time when David was being rejected and there was rebellion by Absalom. And so I was like, Absalom, I'm pretty sure that might have been like one of his sons, but I'm not 100% sure. And so it gave a cross-reference to 2 Samuel. And but he said but it definitely is a time when there was treason against him. Because remember, if we start reading further down, how long will you threaten a man? Will all of you attack? So he's really he's under attack. So I go back to 2 Samuel. So the story, it goes through 2 Samuel for a little bit, chapter 12 to 18, maybe something like that. I think the reference he was giving in particular was chapter 15 to 18. 2 Samuel 15 to 18 was talking more about the whole conspiracy that Absalom is creating. So there's a lot of history with Absalom. And number one, I'm like, so I'm starting to learn about where these sons are coming from. And I'm like, this is definitely one reason why God was like, you should not have multiple wives. Because then there's kids from all over the place and they are getting nuts. And anyway, so Absalom gets a little upset. And so then he starts conspiring against the king and he's turning people, and then it becomes this full-on revolution. So his son rejects him and is basically wanting to turn everybody, in the kingdom to overthrow King David and put him in charge, you know? So, so there's all this. So imagining him saying this, so he's saying, I'm at rest in God alone. This is when his own son is like trying to like get him off the throne and get himself in here. So my busyness in my day isn't quite as intense as this. But you know what? Like we said, like God's here in all of this, you know? And so whether it's just like feeling crazy, frazzled, disorganized, chaotic, just in my day to day, God's here for that. And he was here in the really crazy, like my son's after me kind of crazy. So I'm excited to dig a little bit more into that. And as I dug into that story, I'm just like, man, so David, God says that David is a man after his own heart, but he is a man that made a lot of mistakes. But you know what he did not make the mistake of doing? Or he did right, I guess. He, even in all the stuff that he was doing wrong, he constantly was putting his focus on the Lord. So despite his circumstances, his thoughts were on God and saying, God is my fortress. Now, you know, of course we can raise all kinds of questions and things like that, but that is so powerful right there.